All Israel News Update. I'm Hanan Lushinsky, and today we're going to talk about what everyone in the world is talking about right now, which is the accident and death of Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi, as well as the Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian, in a crash in a mountainous area near Azerbaijan. We're going to talk about what happened and what the impact is for Israel. So let's start with what happened. The President and the Foreign Minister, they were on a visit in Azerbaijan, which is a neighboring country just to the northwest of Iran. The President and the Foreign Minister were part of a convoy of 3 helicopters. On their helicopter was an old American helicopter, actually manufactured in the US in the 1970s, produced by Bell. So Iran, actually many people don't know this, before the revolution, Iran had many US-produced military vehicles and aircraft. So this one is actually an old helicopter that remained in Iran from that time. So the President and the Foreign Minister traveled back. It was very bad weather, very foggy and rainy weather. After Iran lost contact with the helicopter, a frenzied search began that stretched into the night as darkness descended soon after the crash. And some 12 to 14 hours after the crash, actually, Iran found the wreckage, found the site where the helicopter had crashed, and confirmed that indeed President Raisi and the Foreign Minister Amir Abdollahian had indeed died in the crash. So since then, the internet has been awash, as usual, with all kinds of rumors, all kinds of jokes, memes, and everything else. Many people saying that Israel maybe had something to do with the crash, saying that they assassinated President Raisi as a retaliation for the large-scale assault by Iran against Israel just over a month ago, a month and a half maybe, when Israel shot down most of the drones and missiles that were launched by Iran against Israel. Amid all the rumors, one of the most popular jokes, at least in Israel, over the past few hours has been to say that the helicopter pilot actually was called Helicopter and was a Mossad agent. This actually was picked up by Telegram groups from Iran and some from Hamas who didn't get the joke and then started to report that actually the Mossad pilot named Helicopter was responsible for the crash. This, of course, isn't true. An Israeli official told Reuters in an official statement that Israel had nothing to do with the crash. And I will now explain why this is probably the truth and that Israel didn't have anything to do with the crash, as it doesn't really benefit Israel all that much. So at first, let's look at who those people are. Who was President Ebrahim Raisi? So in Iran, Raisi is known, or one of his best known monikers is the Butcher of Tehran, or the Executioner of Tehran. So starting out as a young cleric, Raisi rose through the ranks to get to a position where in the 1980s, following the Iran-Iraq War, he became part of a 4-member committee that sentenced thousands of regime opponents to their deaths after torturing some of them. Estimates actually speak of up to 30,000 people who were brutally murdered by the regime just for being regime opponents and dissenters inside the country. And this is how he earned his moniker. Actually, Raisi since then has repeated time and time again that he's proud of his role in this, that he saw this as divine justice. And his record since then has reflected this. He went on to become Chief Justice just before he became president. And in every one of his jobs, he was responsible for murdering regime critics inside Iran and for brutally cracking down against any demonstrations or protests against the regime. Over his decades-long career, spanning multiple positions and jobs, Raisi grew ever closer to the supreme leader Ali Khamenei, and actually was seen until his death as maybe the leading candidate to replace the 85-year-old supreme leader after his death, which is expected to happen to come in the coming years, of course. Just like Khamenei, Raisi was seen as very aggressively anti-Western. He hated the US, he hated Israel, and he was part of this Iranian regime stance of a very aggressive position against the West in general. As part of this, Raisi was seen as very close to Hezbollah and Hezbollah leaders, actually just a few years before he was elected president in 2021 in a clearly rigged election. He visited southern Lebanon, he toured the border with Israel, and also met senior Hezbollah leaders and families of terrorists in southern Lebanon. Now, to just shortly talk about Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian, who was also killed. He was an important figure, an important cog in the Iranian regime machine. He was seen as a leading diplomat. Among other things, he led the reconciliation with Saudi Arabia that was seen as very strategic and very important. He was seen as close to the Revolutionary Guard's Quds force, so he was also intimately connected to the whole Iranian regime operation of military proxies that surround Israel from all sides now. This includes Hamas and Hezbollah and Syrian and Iraqi groups as well. But he was a bit less important, obviously, than the president. So what's the impact of this whole incident on the regime and on Israel and the broader Middle East? Now, first, this comes against the background of increasing incidents that have been humiliating to the regime. Just at the end of last year, there was a humiliatingly successful terror attack against Iranian policemen that then led to an exchange of fire between Iran and Pakistan. And Iran wasn't clearly seen as the victor coming out of this. And it was very embarrassing that the policemen were killed. Around the same time, there was a huge terror attack by the Islamic State, or ISIS, at a commemoration ceremony for Qasem Soleimani, the former Quds Force leader who was killed on the orders of President Trump a few years back. And he was seen as a large, very popular figure inside the Iranian regime. So this terror attack was another humiliation for the regime. Now, the accident as well, as we touched upon earlier, was also very humiliating. An old helicopter flew in very bad weather in a mountainous region. This was obviously a bad idea. And then the search itself took hours, very conflicting reports about what's going on. And then in the end, it seems like a Turkish drone actually found the wreckage. So not even an Iranian search and rescue team got there, but they had to enlist the help of Turkey to find this. So very embarrassing incident all around. All of this humiliation and embarrassment is sure to further destabilize the regime that internally has already been rocked over the last few years by protests and by financial struggles. Now, talking about Israel, Raisi was, as we touched upon earlier, was seen as a leading figure in the race for the succession of the supreme leader, and seeing as he shared Khamenei's strategic outlook, this probably wouldn't have changed a lot. So let's talk about the impact of his death on the Iranian regime more broadly. The Iranian regime, it's important to understand, while we say that he was the president, this doesn't mean that he was the most important figure. At most, he was the second most important figure. The supreme leader in the Iranian regime takes a position that is somewhat similar to a monarch or to a dictator, if you will. The Iranian regime is a clerical regime. It's being led by the supreme jurist, or the supreme cleric in this case, which is Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah is just the rank of the highest figure inside this regime and in the Islamic Shiite hierarchy. So the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, he sets the policy, he sets the strategy, and as Jason Brodsky, an Iran expert, said today, the president is mainly charged with implementing this policy. So Raisi's death isn't going to change, isn't going to lead to drastic changes in and of itself. But the fact that he was the leading candidate for successor for Khamenei means that the regime internally will be all scrambled. There will be a power struggle, most probably, for his succession, which on the one hand means that the regime is going to be concentrated on itself, might even lead to internal rifts between different factions looking for a position of power after Raisi's death. And on the other hand, this could lead to unforeseen consequences regarding the succession. Now, this depends on when Khamenei is going to die, but now we don't know exactly who will succeed him. This may open up an avenue for someone that isn't on the radar at the moment to succeed Khamenei. he might even be worse, even though that is difficult to imagine. But that's what the impact is going to be on Israel and the Middle East. In the immediate time frame, there will probably not be a huge impact. Long term, it's difficult to say, but it is sure that this incident is one of the most unusual and shocking incidents in the last couple of months. And if you want to follow the latest developments and read more, you're invited to visit our website, allisrael.com.